Don't mind me, just surrounded by all my poor decisions and my great financial choices. So, I like to think I'm a pretty consistent mini painter. Like, whenever I go play games at the shop, I'm usually running a fully painted army. I paint about 8 hours a week for 6 years now because of being a VTuber. But some projects slip through the cracks, and one in particular still haunts me to this day. This fuck. So I can explain. So 4 years ago, I thought it'd be fun to try my hand at a great cling one. Because like in my brain, it was a simple idea. You just take a great unclean one and you make it smooth, right? So it turns out that sculpting is actually really hard. And in addition to that, the great unclean one has a bunch of grubbly little fucking details that if you want to make properly clean, you have to sand them off and then you have to rebuild them back up and you have to kind of know how anatomy works. And I was not prepared for any of that whatsoever. Also, at some point, 2022 Hal must have damaged the head, and I decided to replace it with the Frame Arms Girl head for reasons me in 2026 has no real clue whatsoever, but I don't regret it because even though I want to redo this project, just a weird primal wrongness to the Frame Arms Girl head is chef's kiss. So after this kind of just colossal fuck up, I left my great quote-unquote cling one in this weird malformed state, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I just kind of left it to sit for 4 years, just waiting for some magical moment to fix it. And hey, I guess that magical moment is now, so let's do that. So a while back, I pledged for the Of Oil and Iron Kickstarter, which is this really cool mech fighting game, which I have done absolutely nothing with other than making this really, really cool Chaos Sentinel. Yay. Another part of that Kickstarter came with a set of industrial piping terrain, which when I saw it, I started to get ideas for how to unfuck my great unclean one. Specifically, it made me think of the 9th edition Daemon Codex version of Nurgle, which is heavily industrialized, filled with pipes, and at last I actually had a direction on how to unfuck my great unclean one, so here are the steps I took to do that. So my immediate concern was removing the horrible cursed head and replacing it with a new one, and for some reason I forgot that I had a hobby saw, so I used this little saw instead, and it was a wrong choice. Don't use this saw. The mixture of clay and other like green stuff and whatnot was so thick, and the plastic was so thick that eventually I was able to cut through the head and the ass of the great unclean one, but in the process I really, really jacked up the blade, so use a hobby saw for this. Don't do what I did. So for the actual head swap, I found this really cool one in my mini factory, which I'll go ahead and link below. And just sort of like the serene priestly look of it made me sort of want to make a variant of Rotigus instead of a generic great unclean one. A lot of times Rotigus in lore masquerades as a rain deity, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to take a similar concept, but instead of rain, just sort of lean towards pollution and technology and whatnot. Also got some footage of me shaving off its ass, and don't worry, I kept the ass for a future project. What future project? I don't know, but, you know, sometimes you just need a spare ass. And now that the ass is removed, I can start gluing on those big-ass pipes. For a lot of this project, I'm going to be using the baking soda and super glue trick, which causes the super glue to become really, really hard and dry really, really quick, because I have a lot to glue on here. Also, in past how baffling decisions that just keep adding up, I thought that I would be magnetizing the great cling one, so at this stage, I'm going to actually glue on the arm, and because there's a big hole in there for probably something I cut out, I'm going to fill it up with these little pipes I had. These are 3D printed. And I figured this way I could replicate the look of Rodigus's left arm, which is just covered in little tentacles and tongues and whatnot. And now that all the pipes are glued on, it's time to bulk up this bad boy with... But yeah, aluminum foil is pretty legit for a lot of sculpting projects. I don't know how to like do proper sculpting, but I've used it for terrain in the past, and it's really easy just to glue on there with super glue and then later come back with PVA and just like really lock that bad boy in. And with that, I can fill in a lot of gaps on the great unclean one and get ready for the next stages. And on top of that aluminum foil is some milliput. Now, I don't use milliput a whole lot, and honestly, this milliput has been sitting in my fridge for 4 years now, because I think I used it when I first tried this abomination. But I figured for the most part that should be fine, and I use it to cover up the aluminum foil, fill any gaps, and kind of make it feel more fleshy. because the aluminum foil is great for bulk, but it's still got the aluminum foil texture to it. So you got to really, really, really try to remove that with the milliput. So after the milliput dried, I figured there was a lot of empty space on the model. So a couple places I added some extra pipes, and also I had this like little bunch of cheapo grapes I picked up at Michael's. And I figured I could cut those in half and then use them as big-ass swords, which ended up actually being surprisingly good. Also, it uses very little grapes, so I can continue to use this process for a while. And then for a quick little blast of rust paint all over the metal, because I like the texture of rust paints, but I usually like kind of formulating the actual color of the rust, so I do it pre-priming just to kind of make it easier on myself. So in order to sort of smooth out the skin a bit further, I'm covering it with a very, very thin layer of Tamiya putty that's been thinned down with Tamiya airbrush cleaner. That stuff is also basically chemically identical to Tamiya extra thin, so if you ever need a restock on that, just buy one of those jugs, that'll last you a while. And I'm just like really putting it all over the model. And then after that's dried for a bit, I'm actually using a different tube of Tamiya putty, just straight, so that way I can kind of like flesh up the areas where metal reaches skin. I didn't have to use a different color, but I just had a different color, so why not? And also, while you do this, make sure your painting area is very well ventilated, because it is strong, especially once you really start getting that Tamiya thinner into the mix. And after a little bit of priming and basing, the lad is ready to be painted. I think there's a weird chemical reaction happening with the grapes because they are sticky and visibly shiny. Yeah, but I think like after some paint and maybe sealing it with some super glue or whatever, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I mean, still though, compared to the original, this is such a crazy glow up, and I'm very, very, very excited to paint him. And if you want to see me paint this bad boy, I'll be doing that both here on this channel and on Twitch, and I'll make sure all the links for that is available below. And I don't really have a Patreon or anything to shill, so, you know, just show people this video who are also cool and do the usual YouTube pleasantries and whatnot. And with that, have yourselves a good night, and take it easy, and bye-bye, nerds, bye-bye, nerds, bye-bye, yeah.